Well, Theatre Projects Manitoba is inviting you to a party, but not just any party, an art party. Together with the Cluster Festival and We Quit Theatre, the company is hosting a night of experimental performance and music called Politic in advance of their upcoming projects. Suzie Martin is the artistic director of Theatre Projects Manitoba, joining us in the Classic 107 studios this morning to tell us more. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for taking the time. There's hardly a better way to celebrate a new season of theatre, I think, than with an art party, the title of which is very, very evocative. I'm wondering if we could maybe start there. Why call it Politic?
Yeah, that's a great question. We jammed for a little while to try and figure out what was the best way to sort of encapsulate what we're trying to do here. But basically, this collaboration on this party came together because Theatre Projects has a show in the fall, and We Quit Theatre has a show almost exactly at the same time. They're running at beginning of September. We're at sort of middle of September. And we were thinking about ways to sort of join forces and celebrate and get the word out and invite people and get people to start thinking about the show before it starts. And both of these shows, in very different ways, engage with ideas of politics and personal and identity and all of that kind of situates on the body in different ways. So I'll speak more to our show because I know more about it.
Of course.
So The Only Good Indian is a show we have up in the fall, and it is a project that involves inviting artists to engage with sort of a preset script container, like a series of prompts and questions, and then they write their own piece based on their own personal experience. And it is about identity and displacement and occupation and all these kinds of sort of political and sometimes geopolitical and sometimes very personal questions about who we are and how we got here and how we feel about it. And it's also an experimental solo show. So it's quite bare bones. And it's quite intimate with the audience and invites the audience into a conversation. Sort of Act 2 is a conversation. So we wanted to just do something that was fun, but still in the world of engaging with these questions. And so we decided that Politic was a nice way to sort of sum all that together and give us room to play.
To invite participation into something like this from your audience in something like this project that you've just outlined, The Only Good Indian, which I'm assuming also is based off that rather notorious John A. Macdonald's quote.
Yes, it's playing off of that and obviously taking issue.
Yes,
with that
no,
question.
of course. Well, of course, but to invite people to engage in that in a very heavy way might not elicit the same sort of invitation for people that might want to offer their perspectives. So, what's the line then? That's a very tricky line to then walk for this kind of project. How does that work to make that all happen and facilitate that?
Yeah, so for the party, we decided we wanted to have interdisciplinary. This is something that TPM has been doing for the last couple of years, where we have an art party about a month before a show, and it's usually always themed on the show and trying to sort of connect with another artistic community that might be related to the themes of the show. So experimental performance was the thing that came out, but we were like, how do we make that fun? So our friends at Cluster are in the business of making experimental sound and music. And Ashley Au, who's the artistic director there, is also a colleague of mine. We worked together on Among Men, and they did the sound design. So we have a working relationship there. And I reached out and said, would you want to, this is sort of the themes we're looking at, and we're also really interested in a diversity of identities. And they recommended a bunch of musicians that they've worked with who all have work that might work around this theme. So I'm excited because those are new artists to me mostly. And so I'm looking forward to their work. And then Dasha and Gislina, who are We Quit Theatre, also said that, we have a piece that is an interactive invitation for the audience to participate in what is essentially a Google Doc that live gets edited by everyone with prompts. And because everyone's in there at the same time, it just sort of explodes into this strange poetic profusion of words that the logic is maybe a bit lost, but it's all anonymous and everybody's in there together. So you have a chance to say things you might not say if you knew that someone was going to know it was you, but also it gets broken up and interrupted and made in a communal way. So deeply individual, but also deeply communal.
Yeah. What a unique idea for engagement that Theatre Projects Manitoba is facilitating here. And as you mentioned, this is something that happens on the regular with this company. As you observe these events and how they contribute to the upcoming projects that follow these parties, what do you notice about what these experiences add to the overall audience experience for these shows?
That's a great question. I don't have a great data to give you a response to that. What I can say is when we did our party before the recipe last year, we saw like the next day an uptick in ticket sales. So there's sort of a direct correlation there. But also with Among Men, we did a poetry night, and the poets brought their friends who were poetry fans, not theater fans, and that was kind of the idea. And then they found out that there was a show they could go see that was about poetry. So that's the hope, is that bringing these other communities together and going, hey, also you can engage in this other way. And then the other side of it is offering a bit more counterpoint to say, you know, with Among Men, the show is very male-centric because of who the poets are and what the time period is. And so then we wanted to also be sure that we had female and non-binary voices offering a counterpoint to this theme of masculinity, right? And, so I'm hoping the same thing will happen, that these musicians who have a very wide range of identities who are all engaging with their work will also offer an echo about this conversation around being on this land, being from somewhere else, being from here, how many generations, and what does that mean, and how do we engage? So
I love the word counterpoint to describe this, very much fitting in with the music that we share here on Classic 107 all the time. It's these ideas of there's something happening musically, but then there's movements sort of parallel or divergent, and they're all sort of working together towards some common goal. That's really, really interesting to have that word used in a theater context as well. Okay, so when folks are coming to Bodies Politic, by the way, at Sadlery on Market, I understand, what can people expect when they walk in the doors? Because there's all these elements that you've outlined, right? Yeah. There's these different sort of what did you say, interactive invitations that you talked about. From a theater perspective, you've got some music going on. They're walking in the door. What can they expect? Yeah,
they can expect, first of all, to be fed. That's the other feature of these parties. We always have snacks. And so there'll be some treats. They'll see the office is yet to come set up. So that's Ghislaina and Dasha's piece. And it'll be a little cute little like office table with laptops and a bit of a vibe of a workspace, a collective workspace. There'll be some chairs to sit in and some tables to stand around, and musicians sort of on the other side with I think quite a bit of gear set up. These folks are working a lot in with electronic music and combinations of things and collaborations with AI and some visual elements. So I think it'll be quite rich. And a bit mix and mingle is the vibe. We're not keeping it too formal sit down, but there'll be, each set is around 15, 20 minutes, and then there'll be an intermission halfway through and a chance to talk. That's the other thing. We want it to be a social event as well.
Okay. As you have held these events over the years, and as you've observed how audiences interact with all of these, I almost wanted to call them like pre-offerings, because it's like these are things that are feeding into the parts of the season that Theatre Projects Manitoba, as well as We Quit Theatre, is about to be presenting. How do these interactions shape the ways in which you craft the seasons at Theatre Projects Manitoba as artistic director?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. It's kind of a fun way for us to do something else. Because like the cost of a production is just astronomical comparatively. And so it gives us a chance to pay some artists for their time in a smaller way, and also to think a little bit creatively about, what is that conversation, that counterpoint conversation that we want to have, and what other medium might best support it, and who might be our best partner. So we're always looking for another organization to come on sort of curatorially as a partner. So we've worked with CV2, the poetry magazine, and Plume Winnipeg, the Writers Guild, or they do the Writers Festival. I think the Writers Guild is separate. I always get those confused. And so, it's a nice way for us as a staff and for me to be able to think a little bit more about what the programming might mean to people and how to offer them an opportunity for it to mean something else, or to just think a little bit more and be a little bit more curious. I'm personally very interested in cross-pollination from different mediums and disciplines, and so I find it exciting.
So that's the way in which these types of arts parties can impact Theatre Projects Manitoba and the projects that you all consider. What do you hear from your collaborative organizations that come on board for these arts parties about what it does for their artistic output here in Winnipeg?
Yeah, it seems that people are very delighted. They're excited for the opportunity. Like with the poetry readings, it's not that often that there's opportunities outside of a launch or something like that. And to bring a new audience, I think it's mutually beneficial in that way. Last year we were able to commission Jackie Travers to create an original painting live, which is the project we were talking to you about. And so that was very cool too, to just like do a full commission and get a piece of work out of it. So I think, I hope it's mutually beneficial. It seems like it's really positive for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're very much looking forward to Bodies Politic, as I say, taking place on August 19th from 8 to 10 p.m. at Sadlery on Market Avenue. The doors open at 7:30. For tickets and more information, you visit theatreprojectsmanitoba.ca. We'll also link to all the necessary information at our website, classic107.com, and the Classic 107 app a little bit later on this morning. Suzie Martin, this has been such a joy to hear about all these different ways in which you are accelerating creativity, ideas, and feeding into the next season for Theatre Projects Manitoba, which we're excited to talk to you about in the coming months. Thanks for coming down to the Classic 107 studios today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.